עכשיו חברים נלמד מתוך שיעור בתלמוד 10 הספירות עם
Now, friends, we will watch a recorded lesson on Tess with Rabash, the study of the 10 Sefirot, Volume 2, Part 5, Item 47, starting with, first we will read the letters, or rather, first we will read the letters live. This will be Item 47. Let's read Ari's words.
ועתה הבחינה הבית היא פשוטה. כי עתה חזר
The second phase is simple, since now it returns to being Mati in Keter. At that time it is not Mati in Chokhmah, Bina, and Chesed, and Mati in Gvura, and not Mati in Tiferet, and Mati in Netzach, and not Mati in Hod, and Mati in Yesod, and not Mati in Malchut. And then it repeats as in the beginning. Let's continue to Rabash's lesson.
And there's a male from the records of clothing, phase 2. And here he says the same thing, that since in Keter there's 3-2, in Keter of Sag, similar to Chokhmah of Ab, if so, just as there, Chokhmah of Ab did a coupling upon the two bits, the two twos, for the sake of the lower degree called Bina, here as well, the Kli of Keter that has 3-2 made a coupling upon 3-2 for the sake of her lower one, where here it is considered 3-2, the lower one, which is Chokhmah. I'm sorry, that here it's the lower one is called Chokhmah. What happens with it? We'll see in a moment. It comes and tells us that this level that emerged from Keter is included from male and female. The male extends from the male of phase 3 of clothing. The coarseness is considered female, which extends from phase 2 of coarseness. It turns out that the level from which Keter emerged upon the lower degree called Chokhmah, there is male and female there. From who? From the light, actually. Whereas the coupling that was made upon the Kli of Chokhmah, of Ab, for the sake of his lower one, called Bina, is considered male only. It's called Vak because it receives this level of the upper one called Vak. Whereas here he says male, female. Why? We could say since there was the male only of 2 of clothing, and 2 of clothing does not rise in 2 of coarseness. The upper degree is always considered a lower degree. Whereas here, phase 3 of clothing is important. If this is from 2 of coarseness, that's also important, if it's not the same kind of clothing. Therefore, he says here, in the level that emerged from Keter to Chokhmah, there's male and female, not the same with the light of Chokhmah, where the coupling was on the Partzuf Ab for the sake of Bina, for the Partzuf of Ab, of Partzuf Ab. An additional thing, there we learned that Chokhmah gave to Bina. There was the aspect of Vak, whereas in Bina and Chokhmah has her 3 of clothing, and here he gives to the lower one, just considered Chokhmah, when it is 3 of clothing, and it's not similar to there either, right? I'm starting again, and now we will explain. And now we will clarify the male and female of the Kli of Chokhmah. For the male and the female of the Kli of Keter couple, and give forth male and female in their example. Whereas the male is extended from the form of the male. Now we're speaking of what? That male and female have been begotten. From where? From 3-2. Whereas the male extends from the male form. That is, vak without gar. It turns out that he calls it by the name vak, the male. Don't run. The male. Why? Not like in the Kli of Bina of where it extends from Chokhmah of Ab, and then it takes vak due to being born from that, but rather from another reason. Since this clothing can only illuminate in vak, which is what we learned in the Parzuf of Ab, where Keter stands below Rosh of Ab and doesn't let the light of Keter to illuminate there because there's no phase 4 of coarseness there. We also learned that in Sag, the light of Ab that emerged from Ab stands under the Rosh of Ab, while there is phase 3 of clothing. It doesn't let the Gar to illuminate, only Vak. It turns out, what is it called Vak for? Who is the offspring that is born from it? In another form, and due to the clothing. It's not similar to there, where the light of offspringing is called Vak. Next.
Because of the clothing or because of the offspring?
Here, because of clothing. So he explains to us that the light of Chokhmah stands below Malchut of Rosh of Ab. It turns out that its posterior is below, towards the emanated in the Guf. And therefore there is no male of Keter, but rather Vak without Gar. Here too we should look deeper, since according to what we learned, means what we say, that only Vak illuminates. This is towards the lower ones. And the Parzuf no. So we would learn that the offspring that it comes from the phase 3 of clothing, what is the 3 of clothing that it can give? Only Vak. This can explain the first question. And he also says that the male that is born from it does not have but Vak without Gar. It doesn't let it give anymore. And who doesn't give? Who's the one who's obstructing? Who prevents it from him? The light of Ab, which stands under the Malchut of Rosh of Ab. Hence, it doesn't have 3 of coarseness and doesn't let it illuminate to the lower ones. Only Vak. I'll tell you what I'm asking. If we learn that in the Kli of Chokhmah of Ab, there was a coupling upon the 2 twos, then we learn that in the Kli of Binah, there is the level of phase 2. Why? Since it's weak. Why? Because it was born from two twos. From this, the level that emerged from 3-2 needs to reach the vessel of Chokhmah, also 3-2. Now, if it's really 3-2, he asks, if there's a difference between 3-2 of the Kli of Keter or the 3-2 of the Kli of Chokhmah. So he says If I were to say that there's the same level 3-2, soon we will see if it's so. Let's assume that it does. There's a difference. 3-2 in the Kli of Chokhmah, the Kli of Keter has Gar, whereas 3-2 in the Kli of Chokhmah, the light of Ab controls there, where the Kli of Keter will not bestow Gar below. Turns out that they remain in the Gar and they only have Vak. And there we learned who is the female of the Kli of Binah, what is the record that remains from the first expansion. And here he doesn't think of it as male. Only what? Not as a female. Only what does he think as a female? Phase 2 of coarseness. So it could be that he wants to think about one-time zon here. However, actually, when we need to say the same thing, for also the Kli of Chokhmah remains with the record of Partzuf Ab, like it remained with the records of the Kli of Binah of Ab in the Partzuf Galgalta. So they're the same, no differences. Hence, also the male that is begotten from it, there's no Vak, only has Vak without Gal. And also the female of Keter gives from its form to the female that is begotten from her, as it is the light of Bina. And then the Kli of Keter is refined, inverts its anterior downwards, meaning it refines phase Aleph, the first phase, and gives these 3 lights to the vessel of Chokhmah. If now 3 of clothing is refined, he doesn't say here. What does he say? 2 to 1. But also we should say that also 3 of clothing is refined to 2. Here we'll see. It doesn't say it here. We'll see later on. Only what's written here, meaning that from phase 1, it refines and gives these 3 lights to the vessel of Chokhmah, which are the male, which is Vak of Chokhmah, because the 3 of clothing does not illuminate only Vak in Chokhmah, and female, which is the light of Bina, which comes from phase 2 of coarseness, and the level of phase 1, which is the light of Chesed, including the 7 lower Sefirot, meaning completely in the manner that was clarified in Atzilut Zon of the Kli Bina with Partzuf Ab. And the whole difference is that here the degrees descended. And all the aspects of light in the vessel of Bina, of Ab, are here in the Kli of Chokhmah. Yes. But as I said earlier, there's a difference. There she took Bina, only Vak, which is the phase 2 level. Here she took Vak of 3, which is truly not the same. Only the question is how we think of male and female of the Kli of Chokhmah. Soon we'll see.
Now, what from the vessel of Bina? So he says something new. The vessel of Bina is incorporated here with the vessel of Chokhmah. Therefore, there remain in Bina, which was incorporated with the vessel of Chokhmah, records from Zon, from the time when she was in Patzuf Ab, prior to the second departure. It turns out that even when I say that Bina is incorporated with Chokhmah, and Bina is incorporated with Chokhmah, we have it in the past time with clothing, as we learned in Pasuf Ab, that it's got expansion, clothing. It's got a record of clothing in Pasuf Golgotha. Likewise, there remains in Bina of Sag a record that she had in Pasuf Ab. He says, but they do not merit a name, since they are equal phases with Zon in the vessel of Chokhmah. We could say, even more importantly, Zon in the vessel of Chokhmah does not rise with a lower phrase, does not merit a name with a lower phrase anyhow. And likewise, that same coupling that was in the zone of the vessel of Bina, in Pasuf Ab, which engendered one Hay, that descended with the light of the seven bottom Sefirot until it reached Yesod of Malchut, where the Vav in the Hay, Yesod took it, and Malchut took the Dalet in the Hay. Just so they made a coupling here in Pasuf Bina and Pasuf Sag. Who made a coupling? The Zon in the vessel of Chokhmah, and also engendered one Hay that descended with the Zat from vessel to vessel until she reached the vessels of Yesod of Malchut, where the Vav in her took the Yesod, and the Dalet in her Malchut took. Thus, we explained the 4 males and 4 females in the vessels of the 10 Sefirot of the new Patzuf here, from the level of Bina, level of Sag. Because the male of the vessel of Keter, let's say he shines Vak of Chokhmah, and the female of Keter is the level of Bina. This is simple. 3, 2. And the male and female in the vessel of Chokhmah is also Vak of Chokhmah to the male, which is extended from the 3 of clothing, and the level of Bina to the female extended from 2 of coarseness. He asks, even though in every place the offspring are regarded as Vak with respect to their progenitors, we therefore learned that the coupling that is made in the vessel of Chokhmah on the 2 bits in Patzuf Ab, and she gives to Bina, I say Vak of the male. This is called, because the lower one takes Vak with respect to the progenitors. Nevertheless, here in Patzuf Sag, because the male of Keter, the clothing, 3 of clothing, its light is immense and great, and they are called Vak of Chokhmah, is because of the posterior of the light of Chokhmah in the Rosh that controlled it. So it bestows only Vak, and therefore its offspring is also regarded as Vak, like itself, because it comes in the vessel of Chokhmah, which has no posterior. What is he asking here? Even though in every place the offspring are regarded as vak with respect to their progenitors. Here where? In the vessel of Chokhmah. In the vessel of Chokhmah, I'm not saying it receives vak. What is he saying here? That it receives vak. What is his question? We say that he is vak of male, of the male. And from the phase of the female, it's got it from the phase of Bina. So he's asking, why does he not think of vak for a different reason? Vak is vak. There's nothing to talk about. He says vak. He says, why doesn't he say vak? It's vak. He says vak of the male. So the question here is different. Why there? In the coupling that was made in the vessel of Chokhmah of Ab, and that light goes out to Bina. He says it's called vak because it's an offspring. Why? Like a result. Why doesn't he say here too that it's called vak because of an offspring? That's what he's asking.
For the same reason, same tasty he's asking here.
So what is called vak? For a different reason. The answer is very simple. Since here it's not like there, where it's called vak because of the results, because of the offspring, because of the diminution, since here there's a question. Is it an offspring, a result, or is it not a result? Or maybe the rule is canceled or it's not canceled. I must say that here it's a result. There's nothing to talk about. And I must say that the rule is not canceled. So I'm reiterating, why does he not consider it as vak? He explains this way. Here he wants to imply that there is an advantage here compared to what there isn't in the vessel of Bina. One, first, here, that which comes from the vessel of Keter is 3. Sorry, from the male of Keter is 3, a higher degree, whereas in Bina, which receives from Chokhmah, was only 2. This is why the light is very pleased, but it cannot shine in the vessel of Keter while there was a control of Keter, but only vak, because of the posterior of the light of Ab that stands below the Rosh of Ab, because there's 3 of clothing all the time that doesn't let Chokhmah shine. There's posterior. So it turns out that the 3 of clothing, the light that comes from him, descended to the vessel of Chokhmah. Now its vessel has no control. The posterior is canceled already, so I already have an advantage. That something can take preference from what he will receive from the male. Likewise, the vessel of Bina, although it's a result, it also has an advantage, since in Parsuf Ab, there was 3 of coarseness in the vessel of Keter, and what was in the vessel of Chokhmah? 2 of coarseness. A record of 2 of coarseness remains there. The record of 2 of coarseness helps the Bina, which received from 2 of Keter, so it doesn't give her. Like any result, there is an advantage here from what there is in Pasuf of Bina, in the vessel of Bina of Pasuf Ab. What was the question? Why is he not saying, according to the known rule, that the coupling that the lower one receives from the upper one, which is called an offspring or a result, is called vak? Here, he does not regard it as such. But what do we call vak of Chokhmah? Why does he say that it's called vak? Because it receives from the 3 of clothing. From 3 of clothing called vak because of the clothing. So the light of Ab doesn't let it shine. Why do we need all those things? Simple. It's a result like Bina, which is a result of the vessel of Chokhmah from Parzuf Ab. Answer. Here he says that it's not like there, where the result, the lower one, the vessel of Chokhmah, have assistance, which is not similar to there. This is why he doesn't want to say Vak. So he will know it's not similar to there. That's one. What she receives from the Vak of the male, he receives Vak of Chokhmah, 3 of clothing. It's a great light, which was not in the vessel of Bina, which received from which phase? 2. Here, from 2, from 3, 3 is a great light. 1. The same language. He received encouragement from his vessel while there was this light which expanded in Keter. There was the governance of the light of Ab on the vessel of Keter, so only actual Vak would shine. He had posterior of the light of Ab controlling the vessel of Keter of Sag. But when she descended to Chokhmah, the light of Ab does not control Chokhmah, but this posterior. This is why there is assistance here from the vessel of the lower one, so it will not be called an offspring like there. This completes the clothing for us. Now, the level of Bina, of the vessel of Chokhmah of Sag, receives from the vessel of Keter of Sag, where there is Bina of coarseness. It's also not called actual offspring, it's called Vak, because there's assistance here. What assistance? There, he says, when he knew of the 2 of coarseness to the vessel of Chokhmah, he says, this is difficult. He says, since in the vessel of Chokhmah there remains 2 of clothing of Parzuf Ab, there was 3 in Keter of Ab. There was 2 in Chokhmah of Ab. So that record remains. And that also helps him make this phase 2 not be real Vak. Why is it difficult for me? There too, it's the same, where the 2 of Chokhmah descended to Bina, although there is a record there, and we're saying it is called an offspring. That concept is a little perplexing. What is the question? Why do we learn that the coupling that emerged on the 2 bits of the vessel of Chokhmah to the vessel of Bina, he calls it male light for Vak. And the record that remained from the first expansion in the vessel of Bina is regarded only as the female light. Right, Gal, right, but female. The student says, Rabash, yes. Why is it called female? Because there's only a record there. You find that the level that there is in Bina is called Vak. Whereas here in Parzuf Sag, he asks, why am I not saying that Bina, that Chokhmah too, who received from the coupling that emerged in the vessel of Keter on 3-2, and he says 3 is called Vak, that comes from clothing, and 2 remains in Bina. And 2 descended to Chokhmah. And he doesn't say that it's called Vak because of the result, the offspring. So he says, here is not like there, 1. Except here I call it Vak because there's clothing from it. Meaning, when the light was shining in the vessel of Keter, we say, what can it, to the lower ones? Only Vak. For this reason, the third light, the three of clothing, that descends to the vessel of Chokhmah. And in the vessel of Chokhmah, there is no posterior. This is why they have the light of Chokhmah. It's called Vak of Chokhmah. But why is it not called an offspring? Because there is more than there is there from the vessel of Bina. The light that she receives comes from three. So I know that's simple. Now, also,
נעבור לחלק הבא של השיעור, לימוד בין חברים.
let's move to the next part.